Be sure to subscribe and like our channel. Welcome. This is Deeper Down the Rabbit Hole and the Queen City Curio video cast. You know, if you're in Toronto, we're at 607 Gerrard Street East in the East Chinatown. The East goes twice because we're just East, I guess. I don't know. That was supposed to be funny. We've got like 5 or 6 levels of hate mail today because our guest almost needs no introduction at all. Although we're going to give one because that's how we roll. I'll speak to the hate mail in a second because you got it ready, because our guest today is actually Mr. Koetting, who is sort of famous, sort of hated, sort of loved, and the interesting thing is all the above. I sort of took a survey of all the magicians I've kind of known at one point in time, and authors, and in authors, of course, it's a lot lower, but in actual occultists who aren't authors, at least 50% of them own one of Mr. Koetting's books. Let's think. And you know, authors, it's a lot lower because this is the easy to hate cult writer, easy to hate, and it's easy to hate because of what we're going to talk about today, Wealth Magick, and the fact that yes, I saw all the people who put hateful comments, and that's nice, but you're just telling me that you're envious probably of him. You know, like hate and love is the same thing. If you take that much time, it's pretty much like you wish you were there. You just you're just not. So I'm not really amenable to the hate too much. Like, I could change my opinion on this because unlike many of those who hate Mr. Koetting, I've actually read some of his books. Mm-hmm. And you know what, like I constantly say, that, you know, he could send me hate mail on this. So like, you know, maybe I don't totally agree with all the summonings, you know, but we're at least talking about the same ballpark. Mm-hmm. So stylistic concerns together, these aren't like materials that I think they've never been tried. Like, there's a lot of books that I read and I'm like, yeah, sure, that's your summoning. Yeah.
Well, I mean, honestly, I'm not reinventing any wheels here. Like, I'm talking about the most ancient. You light a candle, you visualize the thing you want to have happen, and make yourself feel like it's actually happened. And you know, I mean, there's a mechanism. There's a series of mechanisms that have been understood for. I mean, before humans had the wheel, we were experimenting with witchcraft. It really hasn't evolved much since then.
It's true. You know? Like, there was cave drawings of I want to have a good hunt, and here we go.
Here's your hunt
of me hunting the buffalo on cave drawings before we actually even did have the wheel. People were trying to make that representation to make sure we could eat and continue as a species. One of the things is that this last book is pretty reasonable, actually, like more reasonable than I think people would think. Of, you know, when we talk about like become a living god, people have a certain expectation, but this book says stuff like, you know, to really actually obtain what you want, you're going to have to go and do whatever it takes. You know, and stuff like, you know, magic gives you the tools to combine esoteric meta philosophies with practical action that you have to take right here and now, which is stuff that people would think, well, how does that square the circle? Like, I would say it's because they haven't read any of the other materials.
Yeah. Well, you know, one little story, if I can, about this for me. I was about to start up a publishing company about maybe 13 years ago or so. Eternal Ascent Publications, my very first self-publishing adventure. I messed it up royally. I lost a lot of money, but I had a good time. But to fund that, I needed about $3,000 more than what I had in my hands, and so I called King Paimon. And to my experience, I'll have a largely internal, imaginative experience of meeting with this entity. There's a lot of physiological stuff as far as what I can feel in the room, but most of that's feeling. Most of the actual conversation is happening in here. And so with that, Paimon says, well, you know, you need about $3,000. Don't you have a couple leather copies of your own books that are selling on eBay for ridiculous prices? I go, yeah, but I don't want to sell my books. I want magic to bring me this money, you know? And he says, well, are you keeping those books for a reason? Have you not read them? Do you not have copies of them on multiple hard drives? Like, sell the books and get the money and do what you want to do, or don't. And so magic does tend to, now it's not that I didn't know about those books, but I had completely forgotten them. I didn't associate the value of them. None of that clicked for me. That was what turned the corner to give me the money I needed. But most of the time, magic works exactly like this. You do it, and then there's an aha moment of, you see the opportunity that you didn't see before. You see the thing that you weren't paying attention to.
You know, I basically, for full disclosure, I'm working on an article about becoming an actual deity for the become a living God. And one of the things is that if you can actually predict the method of manifestation, you're probably not doing magic. As in, you wouldn't need to do magic. You'd already have a accurate business plan that it would be like, here you are, you're on the right track. Why would you do magic if you could actually predict exactly how this should come about? If you know you do X, Y, and Z, why are you doing magic for financial success? You will just continue to do X, Y, and Z. Like, and this is exactly what when I'm training students and clients, I have to tell them, this is not going to come about the way you expect. Like, it can't. If it could come about the way you expect, you wouldn't be doing this. You wouldn't need to call spirits. You wouldn't need to do magic. It would just come about the way you expect, right? It's just, so it has to come it has to come about through a series of circumstances that there's no way you would actually predicted it. Like, or you might have been able to predict it. We could say that. You might have seen things different, but you weren't. And that's the key. Like, there's no way it could come about with who you are right now and with what you're seeing right now. So it has to be not through what you would expect, or not through the mechanisms that you're willing to accept in your current sort of reality tunnel, as it were.
You know, there's probably something to that in the high percentage of effectiveness of a seasoned magus's abilities. You know, that I know I do any ritual at all, and I'm going to get, sometimes not the exact result I think. I'm going to get a result. I'm going to get a documentable result. But part of that might be because I've learned how to look for that. I've learned how to look for those opportunities and to see those things opening up that I think, you know, it's funny because, like, I'll have people that'll even hire me to do rituals for them, or I'll teach them how to do the ritual. And then they go, well, you know, I want money. I got this job offer, but that wasn't it, because that's not the right job. Or it wasn't in, you know, acting. I want to be an actor, and this one was in something else instead. And I'm like, well, you had the
wait a minute. If I had a client that literally came to me and said, well, I got a job offer, it's at the money I want, and it's sort of like, oh, it's in sales instead of acting or something like that, and said, but I want to be an actor, I'd curse them, because that's all this work to actually get this to work for you in a job that involves acting skills, and you're not happy with it. I mean,
yeah, no, and that really does tend to be the case a lot. And, you know, so I see this more often in love magic, where somebody wants to put a spell on the person they just got out of a relationship with. And when you really dig, they don't really want to be in the relationship with that person. They want to make them suffer. They want to punish them. Or
yes.
They, you know.
Yeah, I've had that a lot, to the point that I said, personally, I've said, do you want a new person in your life? Okay, I'm willing to do that. You want to get this person back so you can make them suffer? No. Like, won't even do it. There's no amount of money to do it. Why? Because it's if you want to curse the person, just ask me or someone else to curse them, right? Like, just be honest. That's your motivation.
Just be honest there,
right? Mm-hmm. Like don't try to be like, oh, okay, we're gonna make them fall in love with me so I can make them feel the pain that I'm suffering. It's like, yeah, let's skip all that garbage and just make them feel pain. That's really what you want, right? That's a whole. But no one wants to admit that, right? Because that would be a level of brutal honesty, a lot of which your welcome wars actually suggesting you need to have, like this brutal honesty with yourself about where the hell are you, and like, you know, what's going on.
And if you don't have that and you step on the left-hand path, you're going to find out. The demons, the underworld, these are all things that exist in the shadow realm, the realm we don't want to look into. And so if you don't want to look there, if you refuse to look at the monster and you continue to practice black magic, well, it's going to show itself to you eventually.
Yeah, I mean, these aren't vending machines. they have an agenda, or darker spirits have an agenda, which is not necessarily counter to what would be considered classical light spirits, but it's certainly like perpendicular or sideways to, or something similar. Now, one of the things we were joking about was kind of dealing with the haters and stuff like that. But you've had to deal with a whole bunch of of obstacles to even obtain wealth from haters. That literally, when you're making a business out of occult stuff, the presence of haters is not just trivial. Like everyone thinks it's a joke, but it's actually kind of scary. And you kind of talk about that in the Wealth Magic Grimoire and how you kind of got past that through actual working with some of these entities.
Yeah. Well, and you know, dropping a snarky comment. Well, okay. One thing that's really problematic with all forms of social media is we're able to link up with other people's thoughts. We're able to connect with their minds, but not their hearts. We're not able to somehow feel what that person's feeling. But we can hear what they had for breakfast or what they're thinking about Susie, but we really don't know how they feel about it. And so dropping a snarky comment on social media, that's fine, whatever. But there are people who, and I don't know what's going on with them, but who are driven by I don't know. Like you said, it's very similar to love. It's very similar to if somebody loves you and you don't return their love, and they start lashing out. That's really what it starts feeling like. But it does reach the point of threats to my daughter, threats to any significant others, friends being harassed. And yeah, it's not fun. It's not funny, and I just don't understand. Like we were talking about before we got on live, I don't get that mindset, because if I hate something somebody's doing, well, most of the time I'm just going to roll my eyes and go about my life because I got other things going on. But if I really hate it, then I'm going to spend about 60 to 80,000 words telling the world about my truth instead. But I'm just like being eaten up by Hey, so I'm interested. What were some of the comments that you received in preparation for this?
Oh, you're interested, huh?
Oh yeah.
People saying, "Clown, how idiotic are you, Andrieh? How you fallen from grace?" And I wanted to say, I pretty much fell from grace when I took a break for 5 years because of the haters and to focus on my MBA. So it's kind of like I got used to it a little, but. I usually, it was in those veins, like,
well,
that I'm a clown too for supporting this platform. And I'm like, I wanted to tell people, no offense, I write for Llewellyn. Llewellyn is okay. They're pretty good, right? They get good distribution. I don't get paid for the articles that I write for Llewellyn, but you know what? When I write for Becoming a Living God, I do. And that's just basically it. Like that, and it's not just that, but that tells you that they're successful and they're actually, and the fact is they don't let everyone write for them. So it's kind of like, I just take it as a lot of, I've kind of come to the conclusion with a lot of magical work that this is all driven by envy, like, and the other people kind of thing. And the fact is, the truth of the matter is that most people could go out and publish their own damn books. They could market it. They could spend the time. They could do this kind of things. They could get their niche market, and they don't, and they hate themselves for it. And the truth is that this is relevant to what you're talking about in the Wealth Magic book. The truth is they don't, and they would rather. It's easier to give us a hate mail than admit, hey.
It seems like there's a whole lot of concern that those people might have about what other people are thinking about them, about me, because like I don't care what they're thinking. Those people that say, I don't know who they are. I probably never read any of their books. They probably haven't written any books. They probably
That's
haven't
my
done
point.
any. You follow
Because everyone writes a book, whether even if you yourself thinks it's a terrible book, it's a fuck ton of work. It's a hell of a lot of work.
Yeah.
And it's not the kind of work that's. I mean, it's kind of fun, but it's like the kind of fun where you're sitting in a computer screen for hours and hours on the day. That's not exactly like you could go out drinking with people. Go to a Misfits show. Well, not anymore, but you could go to a bar that has Misfit cover shows.
I'm sure there's a whole bar for that somewhere.
Probably many, but
Yeah.
but you could do that with friends instead of writing
Yeah.
or trying to get a book together or trying to get courses together. It's
unless-
easier. It's more fun.
Yeah, it's see, and this comes to like the really the question of why I do what I do, especially like with the hate, with getting canceled all over the place, with whatever the challenges that come with this are. Why I do this is because I absolutely love it. Because sitting down at that keyboard and getting those thoughts about specifically black magic onto paper, there's nothing that feels like that to me. Like that is that's my zen. That's my moment when I'm just clack, 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 and then I'll sit and I'll laugh. Ah, I'm so good. You see that? Clack, 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 clack. That is heaven for me. And so it's like I'm going to keep doing that, and people can keep buying it if they want, and if they don't want to. If my shit's really not that great, you don't have to buy it, but people do in record numbers. So it must be good.
I mean, and this is like, well, I didn't mean it wasn't joyful. Like I kind of should misspoke there and kind of just say, but it takes a sort of discipline. You have to tell your friends no, right? You have to tell your associates like, no, I have to be in the right, like, or I have to, yeah, like there's a lot of that going on, and I think that's another point of the Wealth Magic book. Like, well, are you willing to do what's necessary, right? Like, if spirits tell you to sit down, you summon a spirit. You say, I want to make $1,000 a month, but not so. There's a small gap. It's not a huge gap because you talk about the gap too, which I totally agree with. If you can't even conceptualize the lifestyle that you're trying to get to, there's no, and this is something that the Wealth Magic book says, there's no way you can reach that magically. Like you can come to me and say, I would like to be a millionaire all you want, but if you know conception of what being a millionaire means, that's not going to happen. The gap's too great if you're homeless or you're just barely making ends meet. It's a crazy level of gap to.
There's almost, sorry for being an interrupter, but there's almost a trajectory people hit where there's certain numbers that they throw out of, like when I'll actually sit down, people will get on a consultation with me. They've paid me for my time. I sit down with them, hear about their life. Okay, so what's the solution? Well, I need $500,000. I need $1 million. Whoa. No, you don't. No, you absolutely do not. Get $500 for a car. Live in your car for a little bit until you're able to get enough money together to get an apartment. Like, you don't need those big numbers. It's almost like it is a self-sabotage right from the intention. That your intention isn't even really set. Your intention is actually, it's too big. I can't do it. I'm not going to make it.
Well, like I once got asked that question when I was actually on Canadian television. I'm like, why aren't you a millionaire if you have all this power yet? I said, I'm not ready to be a millionaire yet. And they're like, what? How can you say that? Everyone wants to be a millionaire. And I said, not yet. Like, I would like to be a millionaire, multi-millionaire, and I'll get there before I die, but I'm not ready. Like, what do you mean you're not ready? I can't conceive of what it is to exist as a millionaire at this point in time because I'm not close enough to make the next jump. And they were like, I don't understand. Like, why wouldn't you want to be this? Like, if you could do that. I'm like, because there's no way I can conceive it. It's not in my imagination. Like, maybe now I'm getting to the point that I can start conceiving it, like what it would take, what it means, and what it means for how I'm presenting myself to the world. But maybe like 10 years ago, I had no conception of that. Like, it isn't that you can't make huge jumps in wealth. It's that and you describe it. It's this gap. It's the gap of what your imagination can conceive. For me to conceive myself as a millionaire, I've already started to have the dreams. I know what it looks like and what my life has to be like for it to happen. I can conceive it. But the fact is, it's like maybe 20 years ago, I couldn't have. Or maybe 10 years ago, there's no way I could conceive of that actually happening. That's just, there was no, it just, everyone thinks they know, like, oh, I'll just go and invest in stocks and I'll be a millionaire, or I'll just do this. It's like, but you cannot really conceive it. Like,
well, then there's something also big with having to live with your success, and I know for myself, so I've got a really fun thing. I've opened up house painting companies, cabinetry companies, door-to-door sales companies since I was 18 years old, and I got the idea. I'm an American. I can start a business. I started businesses left and right, and I got this fun thing I'll do where I jack them up and make them as successful as could be, and then crash them into the ground because I never really felt like I deserved it. And so that's it, with $1 million, give me $1 million. I will show you all the ways I'll ruin myself with it. And that really is the case for sure for me, because I just haven't worked out my self-destructive habits yet. I just haven't gotten into enough peace with myself to be able to sit with that kind of wealth and not be bad with it.
Well, right. And this is where you were talking about blocks in particular. Like the first part of the chapters, you were going through all the blocks that people could have. And that was refreshing from a Wealth Magick book, where I was like, all right, this is on par. Because if you don't get this shit right, you will crash it.
Yeah.
Although, some people might actually wonder, what am I reading here? Is this actually a black magic book or what? Like, this seems a little too sensible. Where's all the goat summoning, or where's all the goat sacrifices or human sacrifices or whatever? Or something. You know what I'm saying?
Which I do address in this book is the topic of human sacrifice, and much to some people's disappointment, it is never required, and in fact, it's criminal and just downright wrong. So don't do it. And it's or not Crowley. Well, Crowley, I think, even doubled down on this, but LeVay made it really clear as well that the energy released from an animal sacrifice or human sacrifice could definitely be duplicated, if not exceeded, by a simple orgasm. That fixing in your mind the thing that you desire and releasing that at the moment of orgasm, that is a sacrifice with extreme potential energy. And then for blood sacrifices, which I do all the time, a simple prick on your finger gives you plenty of blood for a ritual.
Yeah. Yep.
It is powerful. Now, that is one thing I do get into in this book, is there is a power to blooding sigils and blooding different magical things. And honestly, this is still one of the mysteries that I don't have an answer for why this is, but the blood does seem to carry a power with it.
It is probably one of the best links to yourself.
Yeah.
Can't fake it. An image, maybe it's a glamour, but nothing lies about the blood, right? That's just you.
That's true. Yes.
To the core.
To the core,
Yeah.
Right? Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of laughable, even as a voodoo priest. Like, people know, like, occasionally, you do a blood sacrifice, but it's not people. And then you make dinner out of it, and it takes longer to make dinner on it than in the ritual, which no one seems to understand. Like, you got to feed everyone who came to the ritual, and then you got to give them all like tons of rice, and then you mix in with some of the sacrifice. So it's like you spend all day on actually cooking, actually more than one day on cooking.
Yeah.
After the sacrifice, to immediately strip it, and start cooking. Literally start barbecuing and cooking all the stuff right then and there, right in front of everyone. Like, yeah, we're done with ritual. Okay, we got to get to the food.
We got to get to the hibachi.
So and in Haiti, it's actually even more that usually those sacrifices are ate right away.
Now, let me ask you this, because this is an experience I've always just kind of had, specifically with sacrificial chicken. It's extremely filling, more filling than just a regular chicken. Like, I'll eat a couple bites.
I'd agree with that.
Whoa. But yeah.
I feel like that it is sort of like the spirits. I mean, and you can consecrate all food like this way, really, not just living food, like not just things, but it's literally like the spirits come down and they kind of get in your belly and mix up your energy, and
Yeah, and getting in
I
your
mean,
belly, that's no exaggeration, especially with voodoo possessions. Anytime I've had a Loa come through me, as soon as they're gone, it's almost instant vomit time. I'm lurching. I'm trying to hold my stomach back. It's really amazing.
yeah, yeah. I like it. It's fun.
Yeah.
But let's get back to talking about wealth magic.
Yeah.
What I don't like is when people tell me I did what under possession. I'm like, really? Like I did what? Like there was one time I was in Canada again with Zach, and he's like, I got possessed. I'm a big dude. I should not be able to move the way I was moving. And I had martial arts contra forms that were not Chinese.
Like,
Like
Chinese, and you were low. You
with
were
machetes.
low.
So fun times. But to get back to the wealth magic thing, one of the things I think we talked about the gap a little. And we talked about the need to actually, the need to kind of overcome different points. Like we talked about the haters, how that can be scary, and actually, but still you had to overcome that for your wealth progress. But it isn't just the haters. Like any obstacle you have, from drug addiction, sex addiction, like psychosis.
And to back up, it's not just the haters with this. This has been a really interesting experience I've had. I opened up a house painting company, and I got a couple friends who are like, "Hey, cool for you." Most people, oh, it'll never work because of this. It'll never work because of that. You're just not smart enough. You never did do good in math. And there are always a lot of people around you that aren't really achieving what they want to achieve in life, that are real easy to attack you anytime you're trying to achieve or accomplish anything. So I've just kind of had to learn through life, you just got to ignore that. Like, if what I'm doing is important enough, then that I can find ways of ignoring that or using it. And I mean, ignoring all of the hate all the time is not the answer either, because sometimes it's valuable to know how you're screwing up, because I'll definitely go out and seek out, like, what can I improve on?
I usually try to ask somewhat more friendly people.
Yeah.
Give me critiques. Because basically the fact is that a dialogue is different than "you suck, ass monkey," right? That's not a dialogue. That's there can be no discussion at that point.
Right.
There's no ability to get real criticism. But it's like you talk about the haters, but you're also talking about in the book basically, like, yes, whatever the obstacle is, whether you, like you said, you have the obstacle of behavioral issues or psychosis, or not so much psychosis, but or fear-based decision making, or a sex addiction, or drugs and alcohol. Like, all these things are on the table. They're obstacles that once you confront them directly, with the spiritual forces, you often will find that your wealth will come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I had this young fellow, like 18 years old, that came to a business retreat that I was doing, and that I was just participating in, not hosting by any means. But this young kid jumps up and he goes, I keep listening to you guys talk about manifesting wealth and creating abundance, and I don't believe that. I don't believe any of what you guys are saying, because I don't think that you actually create abundance. What I'm seeing is you create obstacles, that you create the reasons why you can't have the $1 million yet. You create all of those are the actual things that you spend your time creating, is why I can't. If you let go of all of that, you would have actually this rush of abundance come in. And one thing with abundance is don't put a price tag on it. Abundance is too big to put a price tag on. If you're thinking abundance means $1 million, you're wrong. And abundance often has such a price tag that it's like, or such a high value. I mean, that it can be, I mean, just the time that you're able to spend with loved
Yeah.
ones, the times you're not making money, you know?
Right. If you have your sort of monetary needs met and you have the ability to spend whatever time you want going to Peru or going to, uh, you know, or going to see the so-called Misfits bar that we talked about, right? Like again, if you have all that time, then that's abundance. Like you can have a lot of money, but not have any abundance. Like your life is miserable, right? Because and that's it's just terrible. And then you can have there is probably a minimum amount of money to before you start seeing the abundance. Like if you're homeless, it's probably going to be hard to experience what I might define as abundance. But that's just a personal opinion. Hey, so
Well, that's I think that's actually part of the human problem, because I have been homeless a few times, and abundance for me, like if I had an apartment and a car, oh man, that was kingly. But as you gain the apartment, the car, well, that gets old. That's not abundant anymore. That we start. I don't know. We're not. We have the kind of an eternal dissatisfaction, and maybe that's even where wealth magic comes in, is that dissatisfaction of going, it's not good enough yet. And the funny thing
well,
is in order to get any of the spells to work, you've got to get yourself emotionally to the point that you're okay with things, that you're actually accepting of everything, and that you just know it's going to work out, and then it does.
it's interesting because I was writing about this actually in an article about this for magicians, not normal people, for magicians. Like once you get to a certain point of ease, it's paradoxical. Everything loses meaning. Um, because the magician, if they're not further fanning the fire of their own kind of magic, it and setting goals, it just doesn't. It just gets boring. Like, okay, like we've achieved this, and now it's boring unless you could conceive of greater things to achieve. But one of the things that like uh, you mentioned too about this kind of like the kind of purpose um, is you mentioned a ritual where you light money on fire, right? Which when I read that, I'm like, wait, is this a book of dark magic? Am I reading a book of Buddhism? Because this seems like a book of Buddhism, right?
Yeah.
Like, right? But you literally write. You're like, yeah, you take a $20. Well, you said less, but
Yeah,
if you can afford it
it's really
more,
the highest. You want to, for this ritual, you want to feel the pain of burning that dollar. You want to actually feel it, and as you're burning it, you let it go. So if that's $1, if that's 20, if that's 100, whatever that is for you, to know that it's an offering and that it's going to be returned. It is an interesting thing, and I've never actually like gone into any kind of serious study into Buddhism, but I can't say I'm not influenced by it. Its influence seems to be omnipresent, just about.
yeah. I mean, and I thought the idea was there is almost like you release the demon. It's not. I don't want to say you release the demon because that sounds bad when we're talking about demons, but
Yeah.
it's sort of like you release the inner demon
Attachment. Right.
of attachment to of money. Like if you cannot, um, well, actually, this is true in business too. If anyone knows it, like there's times at which you're not making money and you have to spend if you want to make any money. But if you are too tight on the budget, you can't make the money. Like there's
Mhm.
certain times where you literally have to go into debt just to even potentially make a whole bigger amount of money. It doesn't always work out,
Mhm.
and sometimes it hurts when it doesn't work out. Like me and Zach, we were getting a whole bunch of tarot cards. We got
Yep.
screwed from some vendor who sent us
Mhm.
all fakes. It's success for our store, but we knew we're taking a risk. We knew we had to spend
Yep.
money, and that's the thing. Like this is what that ritual reminds me of. Like sometimes you have to let go of the attachment to be monetarily okay. And there's some parts in your story where you actually continuously do that. You kind of before the show we talked about Lord Satan and the BMW that you just, or is it Mercedes?
Mercedes Benz.
Mercedes, right? You bought a
Yeah.
Mercedes, right?
Yeah.
And but in every way, you had to give up sort of the attachment to being okay with where you're at, right? And then like in other cases, you're talking about being homeless and scraping together the first $250 of a first printing of each book selling for $1,000 a piece, right? Like that. Sometimes that this attachment to the money itself makes it so you cannot get the money that you're asking for. Like you have to break the attachment to realize. I took from that ritual to mean that you have to be a magician first, and then realize you cannot be dominated or controlled by this force, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. You know, and there is. I think you really nailed it. I think this was actually Zach that said this. Is you're giving up the attachment. That's the big thing that's holding you back. Is that you're holding on to it so tight it just can't grow. And so if you're able to let it go, and you know, it's interesting because like those things like the tarot deck and those kinds of things they're painful, but they're tuition. Like that's tuition. Yeah, I learned something valuable from that. And at one point, I had $40,000 in IRS debt. I didn't think. I still don't think that taxes ought to be legal. It seems like highway robbery to me. And so I didn't think I had to pay them for a little bit. And the IRS thought differently. And so they sent me the bill, and I had to look at that and go, ooh, okay. What do I now? First off, I was able to use all the spells that I've got in here to pull myself out of that situation and get stuff going in the right direction. But I also had to look at that and go, okay, if I'm spending $40,000 that I didn't want to spend, plus about another $40,000 for the penalties, I got to get myself $80,000 worth of education. So how was this worth $80,000? And I really had to dig into that situation, journal, extract the insights, and figure out this was valuable, and I'm going to figure out how I'm going to get $80,000 out of this.
And it also sort of those events reset. It's sort of easy to also get attached to a wealth style level, right? Like I have this amount of money, and there's a lot of magicians who say like, "Oh, I don't need to grow any." Not just magicians, like just people in general. I don't need any more than this. Until you do, right? Like until you get to this. Oh yeah, the IRS just gave me a bill for $40,000, X amount of money, you know, like or my car just self-destructed or whatever it is, because humans don't deal with the concept of slack well, like in like you need more than what you have to live to actually cover the problems. Like
so I don't think I covered this in the book, but in the I've got a video course that accompanies it. I definitely did cover that exactly, which is we've all had the experience of you get a tax return in, or you get some extra money in for some reason, and you've got all these ideas of how you're going to spend it, but once you actually get that money, it's already gone to emergencies, disasters. And actually this crazy, it seems too simple to be true, but it was a crazy little workaround. Usually those disasters equal about $1,000. If your disasters are more expensive, you've got to tailor this to your situation. Get that and put that in a bank account. Whatever it takes, if it takes a year of just pennies at a time, once you've got that amount of money sitting there ready for the disaster never comes. And it's almost like the universe is trying to teach you something, and when you learn it, it's like, okay, cool.
Right. If you are able to do that, the universe doesn't usually teach you this lesson unless you're able to do it. That's my finding too. Like when you're not able to do it, you see that things just run right when you're a magician until they don't. But then usually you could have done what you're just discussing, but you didn't. Right. Like, and then like, right. You know, like, yeah. So let's talk about payment. I think on our show we've talked about payment a lot.
Yes, we have.
Like king payments. we also like king payment a fair amount of there.
We do.
It's been a topic on my Facebook and you know on Deeper Down over the years. But one of the interesting things you're talking about, you know, usually for people who don't know, king payment is one of the greater demons of Goetia, and usually his core original meaning was, you know, he gives senatorships, binding people, you know, removes enemies, or sort of kind of removes the reputation of enemies, very good at that, actually. But you use them to actually kind of as this, well, build not just wealth, but what's the foundation of wealth that you're building. And maybe you could talk about that particular use, because I think it does deal with his general area. I, is an interesting innovation. His general area of kind of bringing the right people to you at the right time. That's what I usually take it as. Um, and kind of some of the ways he helped you, because there's multiple sessions where he
Mhm.
um, actually you had a conversation with him, and it took you about 2 or 3 years to implement his plan that he gave you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and a lot of it, with Paimon. Well, first off, I I'd like to say that I treat him like a financial advisor of the other side, but I talk to my real financial advisor much more often because Paimon will give me something that will take me a while to unravel and to really figure out. But yeah, if we're building, and a lot of this book comes to this, and you actually kind of touched on this before, is your purpose. If you're building this empire, you're building whatever it is you're building. What are you building it for? Guarantee if it's just for yourself, it's going to implode. You're going to find ways to sabotage it. I think the truth is that we just don't value ourselves as much as we value the people around us, and so you do have to build first off, build for others. Do for others. You're not here for yourself. You're here to serve, and that's weird for a black magician to say, but that is the essence of life. You're here to help others, and so who are you going to help? And one of the big things that Paimon put in there for me, Bael definitely echoed this, is it's it's a little metric that I've had to use to really determine if I'm going to have somebody as a friend, as a lover, as a business associate, and that's or I'm trying to feed other people with knowledge in with my business, very literally feed my employees. And so are you trying to help me feed other people, or are you just trying to feed yourself? Because that's really the distinction. When people are just trying to feed themselves before they're thinking about anybody else, well, that's not somebody I want to have anything to do with, because that's shallow, and that's not gonna last. But that is really the foundation for me, is helping other people, and doing this. I mean, like I said earlier, I write, I do this because it's what I love doing. If it wasn't reaching anybody's ears, I don't know that or anybody's eyes. If nobody was reading my stuff, I don't know that I would enjoy writing so much. I don't know that it would be all that rewarding for me to write something that nobody wants to read. But yeah.
It's also mentioned in the book, like you did a reflection on demonic pacts and how you said, well, the first pack I did not so good. In retrospect, I should have done this. So, what would you recommend for our listeners, just building around packs if they're noobs, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Andrea, you said it earlier. These things are not vending machines, and so people do see the pact as the dollar they've got to put in the vending machine to get their prize, and that's not how it works. Really, the pact, the way that I see a pact, at least, it's I used to compare it to a wedding or a marriage, but it's not as intense as all that. It's more like a promise ring. It's more like a promise ring that you put on. Okay, I promise, and that's for you. The spirit doesn't give a damn about that fact. What the spirit gives about is your intention. What are you actually bringing to the table? I think in your heart, in your soul. Okay, this is what I'm really about, and so that's the first thing I would say. Don't worry about the paper. Whatever you write on paper, that's for you. Worry about what you're bringing to the spirit, and really, it needs to be a connection, a relationship. So you need to have worked with that spirit enough to know that you want it to be a permanent part of your life, and that means I know people who are involved in any of the African traditional religions know this.
Right.
You're going to be feeding this. You're going to be interacting with. It might look like a pot to you, but to the sorcerer, there's a living being there, and so you got to feed it. You got to
Yes.
interact with it. Give it the attention it needs. Otherwise, these things can very easily turn against you. Yeah, yeah,
Or at least your intention has to be right, even if you're
yeah.
unable. And there's times in which every magician is unable to maybe feed their spirits, right? That happens. but your intention is still there. You still, you mentally, it's still connected. Like, you know, they're still part of your life, and it is about the relationship management. The pact really, like I mean, people make ridiculous. We'll get to a question I have for you that people get to ridiculous pacts that are ridiculously stupid pacts to write that, like, no actual demon would ever want you to write that pact. I mean, ridiculously stupid level of stuff. Like, and really, the pact is just basically like, I'm giving you goods, right? And I'm investing in you. And most packs more or less come down to, you actually have to grow. Like, you can't just do nothing. Like, I'm investing to get you to grow, and I want to see that investment grow. Like, I mean, that's a gross summary, but I think even most demons, that's literally the pact they would like to hear. I will grow. I will conquer my fears. And I want this pact because I just need some help or I need difficulties depending on the pact to make me grow.
Yeah. 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 You know, just to touch back real quick on feeding your spirits and feeding your idols and altars and stuff. If I'm going to go, because I love to travel, and so if I'm going to be out of the temple for a while, I'll go around and have little conversations with all the different things. Is it?
Yeah.
I'm going to be gone for 3 months. I'm not going to be able to feed you. Is there anything that you would like in preparation for that? You know, maybe extra offerings, or have my daughter leave an offering on the altar. You know, but it's and I think this might be, again, more for us than it is for the spirit, but you almost do have to, not almost, you really have to personalize them and treat them like they're just entities that are there, that are conscious, that you're able to speak to. I actually think that I like to do that with everything. Trees, grass, the air, you know, just as I'm going around, just to understand all of this is conscious.
Man, it doesn't sound like a Black Magic book anymore.
I know.
You found me out. You found me out. But well, you know, okay, and so with that, it's really a funny thing, because, like, for me, the whole thing with black magic and the left hand path is it is just absolute personal freedom with how you want to express your spirituality. There's no restraints. That's the only reason, really, because, like, a lot of the things I do talk about, I mean, you change the names that I'm using, and you could just as easily put it into a Catholic or a born again Christian thing, or Buddhist, or whatever you want to, you know, fit it into. But I think the reason that I've always just gravitated to black magic is there's no limits on who you can be, what you can express, what you can do with that.
I mean, and one of the things is that, like, you recently had some negative problems of somebody who made pretty much a jack shit crazy pack that was not part of any of your books, right? Like, that wasn't what you were saying. And kind of, that's sort of why we have to set the record straight on what looks like a good pack. Like, this is like, when you talk about murder or stuff like that, why would a demon give a shit about you killing someone?
Yeah. Well, you know, so when I very first started really tinkering with the left hand path, I got a Ouija board out. I went to this haunted cave that I would do a bunch of my rituals in, and so I took this Ouija board by myself. You know, rule number 1: you don't play it alone. So I go take it alone, go into this cave, and throw my hands on it and just say, you know, any demons that are here, any evil spirits, just talk to me. And the planchette starts moving, and this demon announces its name. I can't remember what it said its name was, and I said, give me all power. And he says, give me 66 human sacrifice, or 666 human sacrifices. 666 human sacrifices. Now, not being a crazy person, I was able to see, oh, well, that's bullshit. You know, there's nothing there. I opened the door, and there's nothing in that door worth checking out. Because that's what a sane, I think, reasonably minded person would do. Okay, well, this is obviously some wandering spirit or something, or even not even a spirit, but there's something wrong with me if I want to go kill if I want to go kill anybody, there's something going on with me. And this young man didn't have that. For whatever reason, you know, he didn't have that sensor of going, you know, this is not And you're
And
right.
I think this is one of the things too is that people have to realize, like none of this should sound that unsensible, right? Like maybe there's some laws you might be inclined to break, just because they maybe impede on you.
Hmm.
But the basics of liberty and life probably are not are not something that why would creatures that themselves propagate and want freedom actually tell you to do the opposite? Like it just doesn't.
Sure. Well, and you're right that in you cannot find anywhere in any of my writings or speakings that I would condone anything like that. And and
Right.
and I
And
and I don't know any single black magician, an actual black magician or magician of any sort, or a Satanist who actually follows their path that would condone that. And so this is there's a problem I'm seeing. I've been calling it the great reversal. The good people are being called bad people, and the bad people are being called good people. The things that are good for everyone are being called bad. It's really a crazy thing that we see going on right
well, it's kind of funny that you should mention that, because one of
Because
the
you do
other
mention
things you
it.
mentioned is that we are in the adolescence of the age of darkness, which the prediction of the age of darkness is that good things shall be called bad, bad things shall be called good. The simplest tasks of that a priest should do will be not done, and instead everything will be about image, not versus the actual people who have any power. The people who who have actual power will be scorned in the age of darkness. That is literally like that's an more or less my interpretation of Vedics. Like
now.
you will be scorned, those people will be kicked on, but not by the spirit world. The spirit
Yeah.
world will not kick those people down. Actually, the spirits will. Basically, it's a promise that those spirits still aren't going to be ignorant of those people's plights. They're going to help them. But you mentioned that is actually going on, and I think this is all products of where we're at, right? This glorification of ignorance and a lack of discernment. Like, the
Mhm.
fact is, whether or not you're a magician, when it comes to magic, if you have a mental disease, you should get therapy. Whether or not you do magic or not, you should, you should get help. Magic isn't going to do anything but make it worse or aggrandize it.
Yeah, and that there is an absolute problem within the occult because you are consciously putting yourself into contact with otherworldly things. There's a high risk of people, myself doing this included, of taking our craziness and thinking that that's God. Thinking that that's the
Yeah.
spirit or that's this, that. And you really do have, I mean, for myself, to be able to parse this out within my own being, I have had to go to therapy and sit for years, on a couch and dig through this with a therapist who he's looking at my stuff because I just sent him my links. I'm like, here, you need to know this about me going into this. And if you're a magician, I think this is important to be able to find a therapist that doesn't just laugh at what you believe, but will actually work within it. But that's really important to be able to go, well, I am crazy. I haven't always been supported in the way that I've needed. I haven't always had the resources I've needed, and so I'm doing the best I can. But we've got to really parse that out within ourselves and see what what is and really here's what I've got to use as kind of my metric is this going to be is this going to get me closer to where I'm trying to go, or is it going to take me away from it? And you look like, okay, so I do want to be successful. I don't know about $1 million, but I do want to be successful. Okay, so I'm going to do a pact to be successful. Every aspect of that pact has to be in alignment with me being successful. Me being in prison is not going to help me be successful. So if there's anything in that
Right.
pact that's going to put me in prison, you got to take it out. Like you do have to. What the pact is something for you to look at to keep yourself focused on what your intention is, and what that pact means to you.
And I think you hit on the nail on the head. I mean, obviously, we're talking a little bit about voodoo, a little, um, and Afro Caribbean regions. Like we all know it's about relationships, But why would something you're going to form a relationship try to get you put into prison or get you killed or something like that? What that isn't something from the spiritual world. It's part of your shadow. It's part of your own being that wants to that you it's a manifestation of yourself. Hey, it's
That's
almost never the spiritual world. Maybe it is. There is malevolent spirits, but
but you know,
why are
I
you talking to those malevolent spirits then?
when I was 20, I started getting actually really concerned because after years of practice, I finally started developing my ability to scry and to see things that I've been wanting to see, and it kind of was it concerned me. You know, am I going crazy here? Did I just flip the switch that sent me to crazy land? So I actually sat down for several sessions with a psychiatrist, and after going through it all, and this was, you know, for an actual diagnosis, I was like, if I'm messed, I need to know what's going on. And after the evaluation, he says, look, here's the thing. Yeah, you hear voices, but they're not telling you to harm yourself. They're not telling you bad things. This is one of the biggest keys in determining whether it's a problem or not. Is it a problem? And the voices that are telling, he goes, you know, we never see hallucinations actually that are actually, you know, verified hallucinations. These don't actually tell people to do good things, to you know, improve their relationships. And you know, I hit up Satan when I'm getting all of my social media shut down, and I'm like, what can I do? He didn't say go kill people. He said, you can stop doing drugs. You can go shave your face because you're growing a beard and it doesn't look good. Go take care of yourself, son. Like go take care of yourself. That's not schizophrenia.
Tough love from the spirit world.
Right?
You know what? You know what? You got to drop the drugs. You got to drop your beard, clean up, and you know, and that will be a good start. And then we'll talk. You know, maybe go get
Right?
some exercise, bro. Damn, what? Like,
Serious.
like, like,
But nothing, and you know, I mean, because I definitely have a lot of trauma that I'm always dealing with and processing and whatever. And so with that, there does come impulses for violence and impulses for doing things that are not appropriate. And you know, obviously there does need to be self-control. There does need to be some help. That is one thing. Is like, I couldn't have done it on my own without my wonderful therapist that to me is an ascended master that came into my life. And so, you know, you do need these things for sure. But like you say, if that's there, well, and it doesn't even matter what you're starting with. here's the bitch of it. It doesn't matter if you're starting with a clean slate with your mind and with your life or not. Black magic is going to mess things up. It's going to stir the waters. It's going to bring up the shadows, and that's part of, I think, my draw to it. Is that's, for me, that's comfortable. For me, that's bliss, is to be immersed in all the things that I need to change and improve about myself. But that is what's going to come really hardcore with most of these entities. Like you said, there are ones, malevolent entities that I think it was Donald Michael Craig that called them little nasties. But they're basically, they're nothing to be too concerned about, because they're just little floating things that just wander by, buzz some stuff in your ear, and wander off. That's not really the type of demons that I work with, for sure.
well, I generally think there's truly malevolent and potentially truly large malevolent beings. They're generally not the Goetia or the demons in the Grand Grimoire or any of the kind of books that they're not what Christians think is malevolent. And they're tough to control. Like, and if you're going there, there should be a reason. Like, why are you going there? And you'd have to have specialized knowledge that most people don't have. Um, you know, it's all those things, caveats, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are not generally
Yeah.
my experience with the Goetia at all. Like that, they're particularly malevolent. Now, that said, I usually, for the people, to go back to the Buddhist idea of things, think of the Goetia as wrathful Buddhists. They tend to be aggressively assertive about what you need to do when, or like Satan or Lucifer, or all those. Like, they're pretty aggressive about, no, get off your ass and do X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ignore them, they will tend to get
Don't
off
make it
their
no.
ass, and you
Don't make
don't
it their
want
no.
to get
Yeah.
them to get off their ass so that you'll get off your ass, because they will cause problems on purpose, because you're not doing what you need to do. Like, they'll make it worse so that way you move. But that's not to hurt you. That's because where you're at is hurting you.
Well, that's really interesting, because I'm going to tether that to the comment you made a bit ago about how the universe doesn't tend to give you these tests until you're ready to actually take them. And yeah. So it's like, for Asmodeus is a great one. Asmodeus has just heaped sex upon me and attention and whatever. And then when I hit a certain point in my own growth, it turned really dark. It was like, oh, now you need to look at why you want all that. Now you need to look like why you're not satisfied with anything. Now you need to look deeper. And it wasn't until maybe I had just reached the point I was ready for that message, I was ready for that test. But these, what I had likened it to in my grimoire of Asmodeus was all of those things that the demons will give you or offer you, or any spirit for that matter. It's the hypnotist watch. Here, look at this pretty thing. And while you're looking at that, let's talk about your real self.
When you're ready, right?
Right. Or actually, it's almost like right before you're ready.
Right before you're ready. That's true. The also truth is about that is that when we're talking about pacts and actual working with demons, and it's not just demons. Let's be honest. This could be Hindu spirits. It could be hell. If people have a relationship with the angels, it could be this true. This could be the truth too. That they will do this right before you're ready, and but you're close. You're right. Ignore that at your own peril, because that is what destroys the pact. That's what destroys the relationship, because they're no longer able to fulfill a teacher role. So they no longer have a purpose, right? And more often than not, you see magicians and witches, they kind of ignore that, and what happens is their life goes to shit, or they try to call that same spirit up that told them the advice, and they get no response, right? Because they've destroyed the pact. They've actually destroyed the real pact, the what was going on.
Yeah. Well, and once again, to go back to Zach's question about like what's the, what are some of the improvements I made. One thing is you're not asking the spirit for things. You're dedicating yourself to something, and you're asking the spirit to witness that. And so, I'm going to read off of mine here on the wall that I've got for Lucifuge. Loose covenant to dedicate all that I have and all that I am to the expansion and solidification of my infernal empire. In this work, all powers of darkness and light will aid me in excess of health, life, blah, 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 a bunch of things that all of these powers are just going to help me do everything, because I am doing the one thing that I'm here to do. And so the whole thing is so I liken it to the Viking shield. So your Viking will get a shield and paint and engrave different runes, very specific runes, specific to him, specific to what he wants to do in battle, that he puts on the shield. But he doesn't think that shield is just going to go out into war itself. He's got to put that on, go rush into battle, and from there, basically assume that he's got the protection and empowerment of the spirits that he goes with. But they're definitely not going to be there empowering or protecting him if he's just sitting at home letting other people fight the battle. Yeah. And so it is like, and I've got 4 packs here on my wall. These are I would say that the 4 packs that I maintain. And when I say maintain, a lot like feeding the spirit. I'll go by, I'll read them. I've got them tacked to the wall right there. I'll go by and read them. I'll gaze at them and remember the moment that I made those packs. And I'll read over and see the parts of it that are silly, where I'm asking for silly things, But yeah, it is, once again, the pact, the written pact is for you. The spirit's only concerned about the energy you bring. And you talked about payment, payment, and this is the big thing with working with any of this. First off, the payment is the investment of energy, the investment of interest, the passion that you have, the desire you have. But also, I think for me, I've seen the biggest thing is recognition of what you see in front of you. So you get the $20 on the street, pick it up. Thank you, Paimon. I appreciate this, man. And if you don't do that, if you just go, oh, that's if you do worse, if you don't pick that $20 up because that's not for you, what's that doing there? You're once again, you're violating the pact. You're not believing in the words that you actually wrote down. And that really is, because like the words.
I'd like to thank King Payman for getting me back on the social track and doing my work as writing magic books again.
Oh yeah, see.
There you go.
And then it's the funny thing that Satan told me that just keeps going in my mind is like I didn't give you the Mercedes. I gave you all the obstacles. I didn't give you the thing that you got. You went and got that on your own. I gave you all the obstacles. Now the funny thing about obstacles, you said earlier, when when magic works, it's going to work by the route that you're not expecting it to work. That means that there is a gap between you and where you want to go, and that gap is filled by the obstacles that you cross. And so those obstacles are put in your path. You're not going to. That is the pathway. That it's not the obstacles in your path. The obstacles are your path.
That will be my article in a nutshell. It is. You can ask Zach. He's read it. It is pretty much that.
No, that's awesome. But that's I'll tell you what. That's one of the things. So I went to a men's group that was a couple years ago. Just my whole life was crashing. I was crashing my life. I'm not going to blame it on my life. It was me. I was driving the car and I was crashing it into everything. And so I go sign up for this basically Latino Tony Robbins, and go to his thing in New York, and it's a bunch of the most wealthy, connected people. I make pretty good money. I was the poorest person in the room every day that I was there. And I was keenly aware of it. Other people were, and they were being nice to me. But I asked him, like, why did you invite me into here? I can barely afford to even be in these meetings. And he goes, it's the impact. It's not the money you have. It's the impact that you have. Okay, he goes, if I can make a positive change in you, then that'll spread to all the people that you impact. I'm like, all right, sweet. I'll go along with that. But I'm really in my head one day about my business and trying to solve the problems of how to become a living God to do what I wanted it to do. And so one of these guys, he owns more companies than owns more companies than I have failed, and he's doing wonderfully with them all. Just this guy is ridiculously wealthy. Pulls me to the side and he goes, hey, so what's your conundrum? What are you trying to figure out and fix here? I go, well, here's the thing. I want to give people transformation. Like I've got the tools to hand people everything they need to completely transform their lives, but all that people want are spell books. And he goes, well, why don't you start selling spell books? He goes, you know how much money I put into knowing what my customers want? And I still don't know. You know what your customers want? Give them spell books. No, here's the challenge of writing something like the Wealth Magick Spellbook. We've been able to kind of define, like, walking around Buddhism, voodoo, all these different systems. There really are some like primary fundamentals of changing the way you think about things, changing the way you feel about things, that lock all the magic into place. And so all of the different spells, it's really like taking that same format and here's how to apply it to different things. But once you understand the shifts that you're making inside yourself, you can just make them willy-nilly. And then you literally can get whatever you want just by making those shifts. Yeah.
I mean, I'm aware too that our market likes spell books, and I don't like writing spell books.
Yeah, when it is difficult. It is difficult because it's like, okay, now you're going to light the candle and you're going to imagine. Remember the last one I told you to imagine? Well, you're going to do the same thing. You can do the exact same thing.
And it's almost like, when I do spells and rituals for clients, it's not like any of the spells are exactly the same because everyone's condition's different. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, when I'm going to spell, it's like, well, okay, I can give you the cookie recipe, but that doesn't really mean that you know how to bake a cookie.
You read a cookie recipe.
Well, and that probably is the issue. You know, I'm 41 years old, 41 years old, something like that, and I've been at this since I was 12. And so I just get into the kitchen and cookies just know how to fly out of me. And so maybe, you know, for people who don't necessarily know how to make cookies that well, a cookbook is definitely going to help. And I mean, what I would have given for a spell book when I was a kid trying to learn this stuff for sure, but it'd be kind of a little later on in the journey, you start to realize, well, it is really just about the internal shifts that you're making. It's the way that you're seeing and feeling about things that really makes the whole difference. And I think there's such a deep, profound secret buried in that, in that change the way you think and the way you feel, and your reality changes. That once they've got it figured out, this is going to be the basis of human education. Really, is once you learn how to do this, you become God.
Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, and then again, like, because you're changing the way you think about stuff, it may not change instantly. It may take a year, but it still happens. And actually, like, this is the thing most people don't understand. Like, I think, well, maybe many people understand this. The truth is that I've come to the conclusion that once you get the basics down, almost every magical that you do has an actual impact. Like, I mean, yes, you got to have some basics down. You got to be able to sit still for a little while. Obviously, there's this basics training, but after that stage, almost every single working has a result. But mostly people miss the result because it doesn't come in the mechanism that they're actually expecting, or they get themselves in the way, or they ask for something that technically comes true. Like, there's the famous one that people talk about. It's not famous, but I've heard this more than often than not. Somebody asks for somebody, a new love to come in their life that has blonde hair and will always be there for them, and a stray Labrador shows up at their house. Right?
Yeah.
Right? Like, that kind of thing where they do the spell, but it's like, obviously my love spell failed. But did it? This is a totally loyal animal that has blonde hair and totally cares that you're around. And one could express that as actual love, right? Like,
sure.
Did that spell fail? Like, oftentimes we're looking at things and the spells don't fail. They do succeed.
Well, yeah, the biggest shift that I've seen within myself, how I can tell 100% that the ritual I just did is going to work, is if after the ritual I don't care. If after the ritual I'm like, you know what, it doesn't matter if this is going to work or not, because whatever was inside of me, either through meditation and visualization or through like intense, tribal visualization, in some way I'm taking what's inside of me, that blockage and the attachment, expressing it so thoroughly that it's just not inside me anymore. It is an exorcism of the demon that's holding you back.
So if people are wondering, listen to this whole show,
I am a black magician.
Have a lot of questions about what actually is black magic at this point. Like,
at this point,
like to me, to you, maybe to even Zach, they'll be like, "What the hell is this now?" Like, I thought this was something different than it was. I think that's good.
Yeah,
that they would ask those kind of questions.
Well, that is the amazing thing that people find over and over, specifically with the left-hand path, is like, well, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And you start working with demons, start working with Lucifer specifically. Almost everybody who works with Lucifer, they almost instantly after they start making contact, they're like, whoa, that's not what I thought. That's not what I thought that was going to be. I thought I was expecting darkness. I was expecting this and that, the other. Now you just got blasted with blinding light. Yeah. So, but and
a constant reminder to get off your ass.
Right. Yeah. Well, and specifically with Lucifer, specifically, the thing that seems to blow people away is the feeling of compassionate love. Like, they're like, oh, I didn't expect that from Lucifer. Yeah.
I would say that's true from our experience. Like, wouldn't you, Zach?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's not like the normal compassionate love. Like, some people think compassionate love is totally enabling love, but it's not. It's like,
Well,
no,
it's more like a
you're
parent
effing.
that's stern.
Yeah, it's like you're effing up. I love
Mhm.
you. Get off your ass, or do this, or stop doing this, or
One of the crazy things
change what you're doing.
one of the crazy things that Lucifer has done to me several times is a little reverse psychology. He's like, "Oh yeah, you're liking that? Go all the way, go all the way." And I'm like, "Okay, okay." And then before I know it, I'm like, "Oh, whoa, whoa, wait a minute. I don't really want this." That's I think one of his favorite ways of teaching you is to push you fully into where you think you want to go.
Well, even with the one point you said in the book with Mammon about like go big or go home with this. So
yeah. No, for sure. Oh man, with a lot of that, Azazel and Paimon kind of tag teamed me on this one. Where they're like, you're asking for wealth, but you have no idea what wealth is. You think that keeping your little shitty car running and affording your 2-bedroom apartment, you think that's wealth. That's not wealth. Expand your definition of wealth is the actual what I've got written in my journal. Expand your definition of wealth.
Almost like telling you when you can conceive of what you're asking for, come back.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah. Well, that's so crazy you say it that way because that is something Paimon himself told me. Is I don't even remember. Like, I don't even think I had a clear intention for calling Paimon. I just kind of called him at one point, and he says, what do you wish for?" And I says, oh man, I wish I had my journal right here. It was something like give me your power. I need your assistance, something like that. And he says, "Okay, tell you what, you've got can't remember the number. You got 20 of my legions at your command. What do you want them to do? What's your command?" And I'm like, oh shit. He says, no, you said you needed my help. Here's my help. What do you need them to do? Oh, I actually have to know what I want to do with my life. Okay. And that is one of the big things specifically Paimon will throw at me is like, you're asking for this. Once again, like you said, go ahead and think about this until you actually know what you're asking for. And in that case, I'm like, because this is while I'm getting shut down and everything, I'm like, well, Paimon, bring me God, I could really go for some certainty and security, financial certainty and security. He's like, yeah, meditate on that. What does that mean to you? And is that really what you want? He goes, meditate on that for 3 days. Come back to me in 3 days. And 3 days later, I didn't come back to him. I was that embarrassed kid that didn't want to come to class because I knew I just got shown up. I'm like, well, okay, so if I wanted security and safety, and I'd probably be working at a box store or doing something like. I'd be an accountant somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, some
Not
sort of
an
day
accountant.
job.
Not with my math skills, not an accountant, but some sort of day job. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, like I've never not done the third summoning when I'm like, okay, Penman, yeah, I was wrong. I do the summoning, just be like, I admit it. I might have been Lucifer's the one I have to be like, I admit it. I might have spoke hastily about what my desires were. So let's come to terms that you were right, or it was a little bit mistaken, and then go from there.
yeah.
I spent about like 5 or 6 years thinking that Lucifer hated me and that we were on terrible terms because he was pushing me too hard. I didn't like it, so I went the other way. And then for about 7 years, I was like, I can't call that motherfucker. Fuck Lucifer. And then when I finally called him back, I was like, oh, you came. He's like, oh, that was all in your head. None of that was me. That was all you.
Yeah, it's not me. I mean, I think this is an important thing to kind of wrap the thing up. There's so much in our heads. Like, these spirits are not human, right? Like, they don't react in human ways. And you're getting to that. Like, a lot of the stuff, it's in our heads. Like, the reaction that we think things are having, it's in our heads. Like, the way that we're approaching them, and the fears that we have about approaching them, it's in our heads. Like, it's all in our heads about like the aversion or the fear or thinking the spirit hates us, or all of it's in our heads, because that's just how we are with humans. It's just we have lots of garbage in our heads in a way.
But I don't think that ought to be discarded, because the spirits don't think like us. They don't see like us. I'm going to say it's virtually incomprehensible. It's comprehensible if you enter into a meditative state and transcend mind. Mind can't figure it out, but there is some other knowing within you that can. But once you have words for it, you've lost it. So it is just an internal. But I forgot where I was going. Totally lost it. 100%.
There we go. There we go.
Oh, it's all in. Oh, yeah. But as far as so the human thing, though, I think it's important to lean into that. Like when I go and talk to all of my altars and my idols before I go on a vacation, I'll sit and that's a human thing to do. That's a very human thing to do. But I'm human, so I'm going to engage in it on that level. And for humans, there is something about talking out loud, like we're doing right now, that does develop that sense of connectedness, and that I think that honestly, while we're flapping our lips, that there's a deeper thing going on between minds. And so don't lean away from it because you're human and they're not. I think that these entities love the fact that we're human. I think there's something very special about being human.
I think I just meant that the negative emotions around them are also in our head, right? Like, don't let it stop you, as it were. Like,
yeah. Oh, use it even. Like all of these things, use it. Once again, it's what makes you human. It's what's making you go. So people will tell me, like, I'm terrified of demons, so how can I call him? I mean, how can I put aside the fear so I can call him? No, don't put aside that fear. Use shit.
Oh, yeah. No, things will show up fast when you're totally terrified. They'll come. They'll be there because the bell is so loud. Because terror is one of the, or fear of that nature is one of the most loudest emotions. Like it's going to be loud, and yeah, like that's great advice. Just do it anyway, because it's not do it anyway. Like it'll be a stronger summon you expect when you do it because of that. You can't lie about fear. Like you could be confused about other things, but fear is so primordial that it's like your whole body rings out.
Yeah. Well, you've got one of the biggest things, the biggest mistakes. If I could like just answer the biggest mistake that everybody makes, and that once you get over magic is really easy. The mistake is you light the candle or you do the physical thing and then you sit there and wait for the energy. That's the biggest mistake. You're not waiting for shit. The energy that comes is the energy that you bring. And so if you haven't brought it with you, it's not going to be there. And so the way to bring it, one of the big, and this is part of the reason you got some hate mail. One of the big things that I use to operate everything, I've got to be outrageous. I have got the way I dress, the way I talk, the tattoos I get, everything about me. If I'm really invested, I've got to make it over the top, because that's what triggers me to do more than other people can do, to do more than I could. I've got to go over the top with everything, and so that's why I've got my walls painted crazy and got I get into the theatrics of it to trick myself, to get myself to make that switch. It 100% is that. It is all in your mind, and when you start learning how to give yourself the carrots and the sticks, it works really easy.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Yeah. Well, I mean,
yeah.
But then again, theatrics are just cool. Even people they're kind of cool.
Well, that's really a part of it. Like honestly, I'll be in here. I'll have a ton of candles going. Get some incense going. I'll even turn on a fog machine and let this whole place fill up with fog. And just sitting in that environment, I mean, I feel like there's something magical going on there, and I better, because if I don't feel it, there's not going to be anything magical going on there. And so even if that's just from my senses picking it up and getting it, that's all it's about. This is all very much just about me and what I need to turn myself on and to get myself, once again, to see and feel differently about whatever the situation is I'm trying to change. Yeah.
So do you have any upcoming big talks, new books coming out, stuff that is like right on the edge of manifestation for you, or that's already kind of in the pipeline?
Yeah, Wealth Magick at becomeliving.com/Wealth Magick. So that just barely dropped a couple days ago. So that's the big thing. We've got Connor Kendall has a book. I can't remember the name of it. It's basically the ultimate guide to black magic. That's just a good black magician's handbook that you can turn to for all of your basic black magic needs. That'll be coming out, I think, next month. And then, the next big project I'm working on is actually the one I'm working on with you, Self-Deification Spellbook, that basically takes the spellbook format of like all the different ways that you can approach this, and looks at that through the lens of self-deification, of transcendence, and bettering yourself, and I wouldn't even say improving yourself. I actually don't think that that's what we're trying to do. Getting more authentic with yourself, because things might not get better, you might not get better, but you're going to be more real. That's for sure. So yeah,
I think that's a good way to say it. It's going to be more. You'll be more real.
Yeah, you'll be more real. So if I look at my life now versus 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when I was throwing everything out the drain, the biggest thing, I'm living in a much more honest reality with myself, as far as like understanding who I am and what I'm doing and what it's about for me, but also like not lying to myself about the people that are my friends, the people that aren't, the people that are there to support me, and the people that aren't. There's a whole lot of like, I think most of us just live in a perpetual state of self-delusion until we have something that shakes us hard enough. And I think black magic can shake you pretty hard, and definitely the results from it can. But it does shake you to go, oh shit, the assumptions I made about my reality are not wrong, and that wrongness is dangerous. It's going to hurt me, or it has hurt me. If I don't correct this, I'm going to continue getting hurt. And thus is the process of personal evolution.
Every obstacle is a gift.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So a couple interesting things coming up. Any big talks coming up, or like big training seminars that you're running, or videos that are about to drop?
Not as far as videos about to drop, but I am doing in a couple weeks. I've got a couple people coming out here for an in-person boot camp. So they will spend 3 days with me, just doing every kind of ritual that they could want to do. Basically, I just make myself fully available all day for 3 days to these people. What do you want to learn? What do you want to do? And we do it. And so I'm going to try to film some of that and put some of that out. I don't have any big lectures or talks coming up. Actually, the next big one that I've got coming up is going to be actually about a year and a month. It'll be around Halloween 2023, the Left Hand Path Consortium. And I believe they're going to try to hold that down in Louisiana and New Orleans area this year, or next year. So that's my next like big engagement. Once my daughter's going to be finishing high school and getting into college here soon. That's going to free up me to do a lot more with my time, and so at that point, I'm going to start looking into actually doing some sort of circuit of traveling. I would love to just go to like a bunch of hot spots around the world, do ritual with people, do seminars, workshops, that kind of thing. I don't know how successful that would be financially, but I think if I could break even, it would be a lot of fun.
We'd be always welcome in Toronto.
Awesome.
Always welcome.
Thank you. I'm going to be honest though, just to throw a little political stuff in there. Toronto scares me right now. Like has been for through COVID and after COVID. I don't know, that area of Canada seems like it's gotten really intense to live in.
I don't know.
You don't feel it?
I mean,
okay.
No, I felt it much more in the States than.
Did you really? Okay.
Like COVID. I mean, there's just a different mindset about COVID here. So no one's really fighting about it. So I mean, the government restrictions in the States, people literally fought about it. But those truckers that did what they did were really from Alberta. And the people here are generally like, we're in a major city. This shit cannot, you can't fuck around with this shit, right? Like there's too population density. So it doesn't feel that way living here. It feels more like, yeah, everything's opening up now. But even when the restrictions were there, no one was really, more than 90% of the people were kind of like, no, this just makes sense. Like, it's just a different a very different mindset, like like a more communal mindset that's going on. So no one's really up in arms about it.
Okay.
There's a lot of noise, but the truth is in Toronto, if someone gets murdered, it's page 5, it's page 1 news for a week.
It
And
is.
that tells you
It
everything.
really is.
Right? Like, it's a major issue. If anyone gets murdered, even, that's not usual. It's not the culture of the city or this area. It's just not, you know what I'm saying? So you might see it, but it's the same story. It's not like a school killing where 20 people die and then it's gone in an hour. Like, it's literally, like, people take that shit seriously here. Like, nah, we don't want that shit. And like I said, like, same with COVID. People are like, well, yeah, it's not about fighting it. It's just, I don't know, just,
Let's get through this. Yeah.
we got to live together, right? Like, so
Yeah.
it's just a different
Yeah.
mindset. Like,
No, I think
Right.
no, that's so refreshing hearing, and part of what I'm sure is going on that gave me that perception is the media is absolutely trying to do as much as they can to make everybody feel like their side of the street has the worst lawn in the world.
well, and that's the U.S. media trying to,
Yeah, yeah.
certain U.S. media trying to make it look like, oh my God, Toronto is like that. That's the people here don't agree with that. Like, they literally, they're pretty much on the same page with a lot of the stuff. It's not
Yeah.
like there's like,
Yeah, I
you know,
mean, the biggest
I mean,
news
when
in
there's a
Toronto.
protest, it's 30 people. It's not 300 people, right?
Yeah.
Like COVID. Like, sure, like, I mean, you're going to have some people doing that, but like, really, it's pretty embarrassing when 30 people show up for a major protest and that's it, out of a city of like multi-million people. That's kind of telling you, yeah, people really not on the same page. Like, so yeah, there's, again, that goes back to the media presenting things that just aren't.
Yeah, because I mean, the biggest thing in Toronto news is we just had a Comic-Con. That's been the news line,
Oh, nice.
right?
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. There's, like,
No, that's
so,
that's
yeah.
that's cool. So no, that's I think that really is hugely problematic. Is unless you talk to somebody who's got boots on the ground, who's actually living there, man, the media can make you, like they did with me, they can make anything seem like it's actually happening, and with absolutely no evidence. This is actually, I think this is going to go into history books as a really interesting period of disinformation.
I'd like to say, if people put aside, if you are getting that kind of media stream, put it aside, come visit us in Toronto. We'll do crazy rituals and have a great time. And in our store at 607 Gerard Street. And, like, you come into rituals, like, maybe you'll actually get me, who is not like Mr. Koetting, who actually has trouble writing new books on for many years to actually write a new book. The more rituals we have, big rituals again. I love it. I love that, the theatrics of the big rituals.
So how hard is, I know we're probably running way over time, and how much of a pain in the ass is it to run a brick and mortar store? Like, I've always wanted to do that, but it seems like a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot in the ways you wouldn't expect.
How do you mean?
So, like, now we're talking about me as the business manager. So Zach, so we have an acupuncture, first of all, and people can send hate mail to andriehvitamus@gmail.com, right? First of all, I would never actually bet on a spiritual occult store as the primary business at first, for a lot of reasons. It takes time to build up the community to support such a store. We're an acupuncture and healing clinic first. Now, as you know, as we talked about dark magic and black magic, healing is not separated from any magic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now we're starting to get to the point where I'm in the plan, and it was a very patient, kind of meticulous, slow plan that we're starting to be like very public about the fact we have a store, very public about, yes, we're here. But it was like, I'd say it was 2 years that I kept telling Zach, yeah, let's kind of push the acupuncture, have the products, some products, kind of get some more, start very slow, because you're well aware from your own experience that haters going to hate, and they try to throw ridiculous amounts of malevolent energies for no reason that doesn't do anything. But that's annoying. It takes time to deal with. and you kind of don't want to focus that when you're trying to build something like. So the brick and mortar, then you get to it's kind of like then you get into all the lame stuff that no one actually thinks that you have to do for a brick and mortar stuff like pricing models or like inventory or what should we
Photography.
actually be photography or what do we actually have to carry in store, like what should we carry, and that gets into what should we leave off. Now we made a weird tactical decision. We're in a cult store with we sell no books, and it's like, what do you mean? Well, we have a membership program. We have now about 1,200 books, all of which are there for a library that people could check out. And if people want to buy the books, we'll go get the books for them. And that was a tactical decision. And it might sound like, well, why would you possibly make that decision? It's because good books people are going to buy, and not so good books they're going to get pissed that they bought them. And not only that, like from a store point of view, unfortunately, the markup on books are really tiny. So that was part of the decision. And it also supports what our store is about, right? Like we want to do similar things to what you described. We want to expand the level of actual magic and occultism into the Toronto area, right? So doing the library makes a lot of sense to actually allow anyone to publicly come in and check any books. And there are rare books in that library. It's not like they're all books easily found. Some of those books you cannot find. You won't be able to find them. You won't be able to buy them at this point. Like some of those books that are in the library that we have. So yeah, it's like this is sort of like there's a give and take. There's kind of like how are you strategizing it? Like how do you grow? Like now, if you decide to start a store, you have a bigger community who would come out and support it. So that would be a little easier. So we were sort of supporting it from let's continue to do the healing work we do and then kind of build slowly.
That makes sense to have almost a foundation of something more respectable, like acupuncture and healing and stuff. Because it's just a magic shop that, especially if it's not in the right city, that can go over really, really poorly.
I think Toronto's the right city. It just takes time for people to warm up to stuff here. I think everything has to grow slowly. Like I think a lot of stuff's hidden here, and you have to find it. Everything's word of mouth, and I think I knew that. I think I got the egregore about that. Like, grow slowly, and kind of. So the store part of that is challenging too, because at first, if you try to grow too big, you'll shut down because you'll incur too many debts and you won't be able to keep them up, and then you have all this retail stuff and the business closes. So it's kind of like some of the things you described. I feel like one of the hardest things was getting our egregore right, and I think we just have gotten the egregore right. Like I think for a while the egregore of the store was it was right, but it wasn't right, and I think making the spirit of the store right took a while. So there was magical components of it. There's this physical component of making sure you have the inventory, deciding what to strategically cover when, and the boring stuff of accounting and marketing in a city that actually isn't so techno marketing advanced. Like flyers are still a thing here versus like what goes on in the States, right? So like you realize that you have to kind of adapt to the culture and go from there. And then part of that was we started doing the show again, which, and it's paid off. People from Toronto are kind of recognizing us from the shows we're doing, and they come in, they say hi. And then, some of those people were like, yeah, that's pretty cool. And they're doing cool magic. They're actually, we try to help them. And that's really the goal. Like we try to, if they come in and buy some stuff, we're making sure they know how to use it, and all that.
But it's really cool. Like when you're saying that you've been working on the egregore of the store. That's huge because like whenever you're creating a spirit, if it's a pot of stuff or a business or whatever, all the little things tend to give it personality. All the little things you put in twist his personality in this way or that way, and so you can end up with a business that's a monster. It's literally a monster eating your life and scaring you, or one that's not. So yeah.
I think there was some of that at first with Zach, and then I kind of rehabilitated the egregore. Like, I mean, it seems weird that I'm saying rehabilitated it, retrained it. I don't know. Would you say that's about right, Zach?
Yeah.
Rehabilitated it, and kind of then basically nurtured it like a. I don't want to say like a father or like, I don't know, or mother, but kind of like helping it kind of get trained the right way, like what's good, what's not so wonderful.
Yeah, you gotta give it the things you want it to express. So you gotta, like, here's a little bit of this. So I was putting a little. I don't give too many details away, but I was putting together a pretty cool pot that I did that has a bunch of cool stuff in there, and it's got a bunch of peppers and a bunch of this and that, and it is to create a spirit that you deify, and then at some point it dawned on me I needed to put something sweet in there. I went and got some chocolates that I'd gotten from my fiance that she brought from Scotland. Because it's not enough that you just put an object in. The object has to have a story. And so I take that. Yep. This came from my Scottish, and I tell the whole story of how I got these chocolates and put it in there because you need to know that there are sweet things in this world, that I do care about you and want to give you sweet things. So that way it will generate that. I mean, it is a lot like raising a child. That's not an unfair comparison. It is you need to make sure you're putting into it the things that you want it to grow into.
Yeah, I think like I said, I think for a while with COVID, before COVID, we were like, yeah, we're all going to be in Mercedes. Like we were like, we're on the Mercedes trains ourselves, right? We're like, yeah, this is going totally right. Like, yeah, like, I mean, no doubt that's how we were feeling. We're like, oh, we're starting to have huge classes. We're starting to, like have bands play, like, right. We're like, this is going super well, right? And then COVID, we're like, not so much. So we've had to adopt. We've had to adopt to, and have kind of adapted to an event that essentially, more or less, will change the course of history. And people don't think that's true, but COVID will. In fact, the echoes of things coming now are from COVID, and people don't realize that this has changed the course of human history. We're not going back. It's not going back to be the same. Like, this will be different from here on out in a lot of ways. Like, we've that disease stepped into it. We are, even with my talking with the spirits, we are at the threshold of a different world. With that threshold with COVID, which isn't done, we crossed, and it crossed changed a lot of things and a lot of people in ways that are not predictable anymore. Not at all.
Yeah, well, and even the vaccines that they were able to create, like this is one of the amazing things with any kind of breakthrough technology, that it comes from some unexpected disaster, and then we have nuclear power all of a sudden. We have
wow.
Yeah, that we're squeezed and we're able to do something.
Some of those vaccines they think might actually cure stuff like any flu or any cold, like, as in we wouldn't have those diseases anymore because of the research they got through because of this disaster. So, I mean, societally wise, that very much could be true. But I even think society wise, people are not the same anymore. There's even as from a purely magical standpoint, we could have a whole show about this. Would be a great show to have. Like, what is the changes? I'm not sure either, but I'm sure that those ripples are not small. As in, like, people don't feel the same anymore. The energy is not the same anymore. City's not the same anymore. Like, stuff is not. There's been a radical environmental shift energetically across the board because of COVID. That you either adapt to it, and so far we've been adapting, right? That's the problem with the retail store. You can never predict an earthquake or a COVID, as it were, or it's hard. And if you can, like, you don't know what you're looking at. I probably did know that COVID was coming, and I didn't understand what I was seeing. Like,
You
I
know,
always see kind of prophecies like this, like where I knew people were going to die, but I had no idea what I was looking at. Like when you see people getting sick in a vision, you're like, what am I looking at? I don't have the context. Like I just don't. I didn't understand it. Like even before 9/11, I'm like, I didn't understand what I was seeing. Like I didn't have the context to connect the psychic visions to any sort of or temporal out of temporal time idea to a decision making process. Like I just didn't have the context.
So let me just throw this request in your lap for a prediction. Are you feeling any tremors coming through with what's going on with Russia?
But not what people think.
Okay. Huh. Because I think there's something going on there that's also signaling a transformation.
I just don't think it's going to be what people think. People expect a world war between the United States and Russia. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I don't think there's going to be an open war with China either. But that doesn't mean there's not a lot of pain coming our way, right? And we can kind of one doesn't have to be a psychic to know where that pain probably is going to come, right? But I think people will have this expectation that's the obvious points. But maybe it's instead you can't buy an Apple again, for a couple of years till they get production up, or maybe it's stuff like that people aren't expecting, that we've already kind of seen that happened. But that's my feeling of it. Like the hardship people are going to have to face it's like a hardship, like it's the hardships they're facing now. I feel like it's just, and that's the unexpected point. They expect some sort of mass great. You know what? People are at the threshold of that. Something's going to happen and everyone's going to die. But I think it's more insidious that, yeah, maybe lots of people are going to die, but not for the reason you think. Maybe it's because they just can't eat, right? Like, and that's even more terrifying, right? Like the vibes are there for that kind of thing, right? Like,
which is really a crazy thing to think about, because on the scale of human evolution, the Industrial Revolution just happened yesterday, and
exactly.
And before that, starvation was a real thing. Everybody had to cope with.
And the thing is that well, and the thing is, people don't understand. Like people don't understand the global. They don't understand how interconnected we are. Wars nowadays are stupid. Like, I don't mean they're stupid. I mean, maybe people think they're stupid all the time. But for any economy to engage in a war at this point, when you look at how the economies all work, this isn't what we should be doing anymore. Sure, in World War II, like, okay, F it, right? Like, maybe there was some reasonable reasons, but not anymore. Like, there's no, I'm certain that China doesn't, I mean, maybe China does want a war, but I don't think so. It doesn't help them. Like, and it doesn't help us. It doesn't help the US. It doesn't help Canada, Europe, anyone, because that widget you get from China is being made into a computer in Mexico that somebody buys in Canada, right? So, like, it doesn't make sense. And there's a lot of things that are going wrong almost because leaders' egos are getting away and not keeping things to make sense. Like, if it was a pure rational system, like, none of this would be happening. But the fact it is creating now problems that I get the vibe, like, like, it isn't. I think I moved to Canada because I think I'll be okay, right? Like, that's what it is. I didn't feel that way in the States, but there's a social net here. It is unlikely in Canada that they'll, even if the food was too expensive, their society is such they probably would not let people just starve. They would probably try to stop that. Can we say that in Texas? I'm not so sure, right? Like, not to rip on Texas, but because there's a lot of money going in and a lot of business people. But it's like, is that really the character of the social dynamics there? I don't know. If push comes to shove, if we're pushed on multiple fronts, is that what's going to be happening there? And even as a magician, I can fuck up, right? I know that I am fallible and I can fuck up. Just because I have a sense of this, I could be totally wrong. And even if I'm right, I still can fuck up and make the wrong guess. Maybe I fuck up with the store, and maybe me and Zach fuck up and we don't have a business no more. We'll start another one. We'll get up. But you know what? It's nice to know that if I do fall down, even if it's bread and water, that'll just encourage me to get off my ass and fix the situation, But if you get too far out of what you can recover from, where you can't even get bread and water, it's really hard to get out of that situation. Like it's hard. It's super hard because what do you do then? And I think a lot of people might be facing that. And that's something we're not used to. And that's not something we're used to as a society. We haven't been used to it in a long time. And probably one of the big problems as a society, as the Western society, is we don't give a shit about our neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, like, how does that work when no one gives a shit about each other and everyone's suffering? I'm not so sure.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, that's and so a lot of people from Texas, a lot of Texans would say, well, we don't need the government to do that. Me and my neighbors are going to take care of each other. Well, that's fine and dandy. I don't really like my neighbors. Like, I drive down the street. There are a couple of them that I wave at. There are some kids down the street that give me dirty looks every time I drive by. Whatever. These are not the people I'd be relying on in the apocalypse. So,
like apocalypse is a strong word, but even if more than mild pressure is applied, what is going to happen? Now, from doing dark magic, black magic, like we know for the fact, a simple fact is that the dark side of our natures are pretty intense. Like, if you don't have that shit under check, and yet it's exposed to the world. This is not positive. Like, we're purposely diving in there and saying, let's make some diamonds out of this garbage inside. But what happens when a normal person and has pressure applied all the time? If the techniques of black magic are wildly decimated or disseminated, and maybe the tenets of certain religions are less prominent, maybe we can all be okay, because at that point people will own their own shit, right? And be like, yeah, well, this is terrible. My life's terrible. I can't eat.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to have to put my pride aside and maybe ask somebody. Not kill them for the food that they have, right? Or something like that, but maybe talk to them as a first step, right? The impulse to kill them might be there because they're doing better, or like we said, the haters, right? But when you apply pressure, is that impulse something you should give it to, or can you come to a mutually beneficial solution? Now, this is an amazing conversation to have about black magic, because a black magician would say, a black magician who's dived in there or is dealing with demons would basically say something to the effect of, yeah, you should try to look for the win-win situation and not give in to those instincts, because they're not helpful in any sort of way. Even if there wasn't laws, it's probably not going to be helpful. And really, even if we have a field in two people's yards, like a small field, having two people taking care of them is probably a better idea than one, because it's just like if you get sick or something like that, right? And that's as a black magician, you come to that enlightened self-interest idea, because you're not giving into those baser kind of parts of human nature without putting it through a filter of some sort. And I think that's the problem that we're going to face, is you have a whole lot of people who aren't going to put things through rational filters. And then what does things look like? I don't know the answer to it, but I can feel a vibe. I think up here will do better. Toronto will do better. I think, because people they sort of have an idea of like, well, there has to be some sort of communion, some sort of common ground, like in the city. But other places, I'm not so sure. What happens when you apply pressure without any people having to own their own shit? I think we're seeing some of that right now. We're seeing the budding. We're seeing the seeds of what could happen when you apply pressure without people owning their stuff. Like, I think it's not even prophecy. I think everyone wants an apocalypse because they don't want to see what happens. Like, that's the easy answer. The easy answer is there's a third world war. The hard answer is, what if there's not? Like, right? What if everything doesn't get destroyed? And what if it keeps going where it is now? I think that's a scary thing to look at. I think that's the vibe, right? Like, what happens when people's ids are running on the street without self-control? I don't know.
Yeah,
but I get a vibe. Like, that's the vibe, right? That's a long kind of vibe.
No, I love it. That there's something I talk about in the Wealth Magick Spellbook that that you kind of touched on there. That I've got this ongoing process of what I call blessing extraction. No matter what kind of shit you want to put in front of me, there's a blessing in there. I know there is. There always is. And so I'm going to dig until I find it. And so, whenever anything, and I actually had a guru of mine teach me this. He says, every time I come to him with a complaint, he'd say, "Well, have you found the blessing yet?" Well, no, there's no blessing in it. Which you haven't looked. Keep looking. There is a blessing. You have to first understand that it's there, and then find it. And sure enough, whether it's that I learned something, or I would in some way, everything does seem to be, if we choose for it to be, it does seem to be for our own betterment. And so you can look at that and go, what's the diamond? You're squeezing me. There's a diamond in here, and that diamond's going to come out. But there is. That is something I think you have to consciously force yourself to do, rather than just defaulting to being a victim. This is happening to me. This is happening for you somehow. When not necessarily, maybe it is happening to you. I think as soon as you make the shift to it's happening for me or through me, that at that point you do tap into some supernatural thing there.
Yeah, that's what I meant. If everyone could be owning their own shit, probably be like, shit sucks, but we'll get through it. We'll be okay. But that's not what happens, right? You described it exactly. There's a vibe when you don't do that, right? There's a vibe when you're a victim. Eventually, people lash out. And now, like I said, that's not a prediction. It's just sort of a vibe, right?
Yeah, that's the thing, because I got something similar leading up to a few months before COVID really started breaking out across the world. Out of nowhere, I just got this impulse to start stockpiling some food, which I actually did need, because I actually did quarantine in my house for 2 weeks after coming back from New York, and I had MREs for weeks to eat there, and still have quite a bit just in case. And so, but I couldn't make heads or tails of it until after it had turned. And then, this is what I was seeing. And so, yeah, we really can't make any predictions as far as this is what's going to happen, but it is feeling into the energy that we're feeling, because it is there's some interesting tremors going on. But I don't think it's all negative either. I do think that
no.
I do think that we're swinging in. We have the potential to swing into a renaissance of a million different sorts.
Yeah, exactly. It's never temporary pressure is probably, or even extended pressure isn't necessarily bad. It's just pressure. But you wouldn't be able to convince people of that. But yes, I would see it the same way. There's potentially a lot of potential outcomes that it feels like it could. It's just different. Whenever things get different, radically different, or a period of radical differentness, people do not adapt well to it. And that's what we're entering in, a period of radical change. And maybe not necessarily as destructive. I think there's people who would actually prefer the nuclear war and we're all dead, because you know what? That's simpler. Yeah. Then we're done. Well, it's a simple answer. We're dead.
There's absolutely nothing I can do about that, and so I don't have to do anything about that. That's just going to happen. And instead of that maybe I do got to get to know my neighbors a little better. Maybe I do have to start a garden. God, I cannot get a garden grow. I've tried a few times too. We don't have the great soil here for it, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or whatever it is. So it's this kind of.
Mm-hmm. But once again, it's those obstacles. It's like the challenge that comes up, the obstacle that comes up, and are you going to find a way around this? Or, well, and I am keenly aware that my ability to do this blessing extraction is dependent on the fact that I'm alive, I'm healthy enough to actually look at it and do that. I've got, there are a million things that are, the people who died of COVID, they weren't able to do that blessing extraction. They weren't able to see how COVID was good for them. I was, and so I count myself very fortunate. At the same time, I know that there are powers that are intervening for that too.
And I think that's the key, blessing and extraction. Even though, I kind of made a prophecy, I might be wrong. I'm not usually wrong, actually, as Zach has seen.
Time and time again, on point.
when I can get better context of stuff, I'll basically be like, it's this.
Mhm.
Like now
Well,
that I've
one thing-
experienced COVID, if I see the same sort of vibe, I'll be like, it's a disease. Like, because now I know. I've never been through a pandemic. None of us have ever been through
No.
that before. We had no concept of what that meant. Like now I do.
Mm.
So if I would feel that again, I would be like, it's this.
Yeah. No, very interesting. Well, awesome, guys. Go ahead and
You got me
close
talking
it up
about
here.
some predictions. Hopefully that was helpful. At least it verified some insights that you yourself had.
No, it does. Well, and we are. I think you're absolutely right. We are in the midst of potentially the biggest set of changes that humanity's ever really seen, and this
At
is
one time.
yeah. And it's like the same thing that made the pandemic spread, which is the fact that we're all so connected, we're all taking flights everywhere, we're all mingling. That's also the thing that's creating the amazing shifts in technology and society. We do see a lot of good, but the the connectedness between people, I hope, is going to enhance. Hopefully, to the point that the internet is going to be able to somehow carry that empathy and compassion through the knowledge. But I do think there is
God, it's like a whole bunch of black magicians talking
I know.
about empathy and compassion. What the hell
I
kind
mean,
of show is this? For the people still watching, are you confused?
I know.
Yet? Are you confused yet for all the people watching? Or you're like, wow, we're talking about empathy and compassion and connection.
Right?
Responsibility.
As a
What?
result of these black magicians, right? Responsibility, like God,
Right?
what's going on here?
Yeah, no, it's once again, it's all flipped. It's all flipped upside down.
Well, very good, very good. We hope to have you come back on the show. Maybe when we get the one book that I'm contributing to done, we'll have try to get a panel of everyone together. Have Zach be the MC and kind of ask us asshole questions. He'll ask me the worst ones because I'm the business partner. He'll be like, Andrieh, what exactly do you mean by line 25 of your article of word 100? You said blah blah blah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. No, well, there's so many people that honestly just aren't paying attention. Like even people that are writing in saying, this guy's a clown. It's like, did you read it? Did you read anything? Like, have you read anything? Can you read? Because it's like, but then you've got people like Zach that are like, yeah, checking every dot. What did they say? Every dot and tittle, every line is crossed, and if it's not, you're looking at it. That's there's an investment. That I guess what that tells me, Zach, is that it's important to you. That what you're reading is important to you.
Absolutely. I mean, that's just that academic point where it's like, where's your bibliography? Where's your citations? Because we want to have a good conversation, and I can't do that with you unless I'm reading your material.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Yeah. So cool. Well, yeah. No, I'm happy to come on anytime. Yeah, invite me and I'll be here.
So yeah, we'll get the whole book out. We'll get all the people from that book and come on our panel and kind of have the show and have you come back.
Yeah, no, very cool. Very cool. Look forward to it.
All right, everyone, we have a couple things coming up. It's a little late. If you stayed on, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, we're going to be at Pagan Pride, Hamilton, in the
next week.
What is it?
It's next week on the 11th.
Next week.
Wow.
Hamilton Love. Sunday. We will be there. We will have a whole bunch of our store stuff there.
We also
will
have
be doing
panel.
divination. Yep, we have a panel. We're going to do a panel for the radio show. So, if you want, and you know what we're talking about, it's kind of relevant to what we talked about today. We're going to do a panel discussion in Hamilton Pagan Pride on escaping spiritual escapism.
Right into it, right there.
Right into it, right? Escaping spiritual escapism is going to be the panel, which includes topics such as avoiding spiritual bypassing, ego self-aggrandizement, wishful thinking, fantasy escapism, all of the above we're going to talk about. So the whole panel of various authors and people at Hamilton Pagan Pride. If you're closer to home in Toronto, although we know we got a lot of people in the Hamilton that love us, If you're closer to home, we're going to be at Toronto Pagan Pride
On the
2
24th.
weeks after, on the 24th, right? So, again, we'll be offering divinations. If you want to get a reading from us, Zach will be offering healings. He might ask me to do a Reiki healing if he doesn't feel like doing one. I'll do it. But otherwise, I will be doing divinations. Just depends.
We got
If he gets tired,
workshops.
he'll be like, "You do this Reiki healing. I'm done. I'm getting lunch. I'll do it." And so we'll be out there in both places. And then next week, who do we have coming on the show?
Next week is Hamilton Pagan Pride.
No. Oh, that's right. What's the week after?
Well, falling into the demonology piece, we got Martin McGregor. So
Ooh,
That's right.
Ooh, yeah. That guy's a heavy hitter. And I'll tell you what, Paths to Satan and the Book of the Fallen, both of his books, just blew my mind as far as he doesn't. First off, he doesn't mind putting the name Satan out there and identifying himself as a Satanist, and that always gets my well, and whether you're a Satanist, a Buddhist, Christian, if you're able to just, like you say, own your shit, be like, this is who I am, this is what I'm about, and Martin McGregor definitely does that, and along the way, he teaches a lot of stuff. That's exciting. I'm going to tune in for that.
All right. Well, then,
we'll
see you then, too. Right? There you go. See, so we have him coming on in between, and then if you check out our Eventbrite and our show site, you'll see we have events going all the way to December. Like,
Yes.
We actually got off our butts, everyone who's watching, actually organized stuff to December, and we're almost ready to organize stuff through February. How's that for shows? Like, if you are a sponsor, of which I hope you'll join, Zach is going to put the listing there, but we have a sponsorship for the people who help us keep the lights on for our store. And what we do is workshops every 2 weeks. We're doing a workshop, the prerequisites for a set of tarot workshops, and we're going to do water, and that can't be next week.
Well, it can't be.
It's
We
gotta
got to
be the
reorganize the schedule. It'll be the week after, but we're delayed.
So after I just spoke about our excellent organization, that came to pass, and we're going to be doing that the week after. And we've covered the aspects of fire and earth and the classic Platonic sense and the classic ceremonial sense. We've had pretty good classes. All of those you get if you become a sponsor, and the links will be there. Everyone online. It's the hybrid classes we do, so they're all online. We have 100 classes in there. For $39.95 a month, you get a sponsor and help us keep the show running. So, and we actually do real classes on purpose, sort of at the lower cost, because we want to actually get the people doing stuff. So come on board, and you won't be scared. Some black magic too. It's not just ceremonial.
There is some, yes.
There's some ceremonial magic. We'll admit to that. But there's some actual straight demon summonings where we openly summon a demon on film to show you how to actually do it. Right. Yes, by request usually. Yes. So stuff you would not be able to get for that price. So become a sponsor, help us keep the store open and the show running. All right, I think that's all we got, right?
That's all we got. I'm going to close it up. Thank you very
much, everyone. Stay safe, everyone. Stay healthy and wealthy. And we will see everyone next week at Hamilton Pagan Pride. Live streaming, hopefully live streaming if our internet holds up in the forest.
That's the plan.